I've recently read the Liveship Trilogies by Robert Hobb, and I really liked it. I know, I'm a little late on the train, but I feel like this series and the realm of the Outerling series in general still doesn't get the love it deserves. I mean, it's pirates and dragons and talking ships, and it's honestly like Thomas the Train in an alternate universe. I was originally gonna make this video more of a character study because all these characters have got so much meat on them, but I'm neither smart nor succinct enough to do that. So I decided to just try to express why I love these series so much and convince you to read it. Anyone who's read anything by Robin Hobb can't help but praise her characters. She's always managing to make characters so dynamic, so real, so flawed.
Maybe too flawed sometimes.
For a book, you might despise a character, and in the next you realize you the reader, were far too harsh in your judgment. And the opposite happens too. You love a character when they're introduced because they have some bold personality trait that's easily lovable, but then you realize that the flaws that bubble underneath will explode under the challenges of the world. For example, there's a character named Malta in the book. She's this preteen girl who's characterized to be very manipulative and scheming, and I promise you will despise this preteen. And personally, by the end of the book, she was one of my favorite characters. I know I'm being a little bit vague here, but it's because the core of the Liveship Trilogies is its characters, and spoiling when, where, and how a character changes is a pretty big deal. But I'll just say, for those of you who like a little eye candy in your characters, you got a hot, ambitious young woman who wants to be the captain of her ship, a hot, gruff pirate who's trying to find meaning in his life, and a hot mom who is a certified town badass. But to be serious for a second, these and the rest of the characters are incredible, and they face genuinely hard problems that force them to grow and change. And equally incredible are the antagonists of the stories, though mostly in infuriating ways. And as you read through the series, you realize that the antagonists are learning and growing as well, but a lot of the times in the opposite direction. What do you do when you gain power? What do you learn when good things just happen to you? What do you learn when you realize that you have a talent to manipulate people into doing your bidding? These men are cruel, but they're cruel in a human way that makes their actions somehow more unforgivable because they're so much more realistic. Robin Hobb's world is one of the most effortlessly magical ones I've read. I mean, yeah, there's dragons, but I'm not talking about the dragons. Wait, actually, yeah, it's the dragons. But she manages to show the reader that magic isn't some mystical force, it's nature itself. The outerlings, the dragons, all of the things that make Hobb's world inherently fantasy, she convinces us is perfectly natural and, more impressively, balanced. Really, the only thing that makes this trilogy fantasy is the inclusion of beings equally or more intelligent than human beings. And given that those creatures don't exist in our world, having those beings possess powers that we don't really understand as human beings simply makes sense. I mean, yeah, I do love when there's a sword in a stone and when you grab the sword, it emits a power that changes the world in a fundamental way, but I've also found that I really do love people discovering that magic in the world is just inherently there. It's a nature that flows untapped. I honestly feel that after reading this series, I wonder if there's dragons underneath the sea or maybe in like the core of the magma. And despite the magic, Hobb's world is as real as it gets. She never sugarcoats how people are treated, but she also never paints the world in an incredibly grim way. Yes, there's misogyny, slavery, essay, manipulation, conquest, but there's also wonder, adventure, love, friendship, duty. When I think about Jamila and Bingtown and all of these areas, it feels like a mini civilization in my head. And even though the series has ended, I can still see so clearly in my mind the docks that the ships are landing at, the different monasteries where monks are crafting glass, the lives of the nobility in Jamila, all of that. And for me, it's rare that when a story ends, the world lives on. Hobb really has made the world feel like a place where these characters were born into rather than the place being born for the characters. The way Hobb writes is part of why the world is as magical as it is. I think this especially shines in the way she portrays how characters think. In each character, their line of thinking is not necessarily linear, nor does it end up logical. With every line, you're reminded of that person's goals, experiences, prejudice, opinions, all the juicy aspects that make a character unique. And for this book to work, Hobb really needed to nail that down. There are so many characters in this book who have their own individual goals. That's not only difficult for the author to plan out, it's also hard for the reader to keep track of. So having a writing style that complements this type of narrative movement is imperative to make this trilogy as good as it was. In the same vein, because each person's voice is so unique and strong, you really get a better insight into how connections work for this person. By knowing how they do connections, you get a better view of the community as a whole. And it's interesting because I don't think Hobb actually goes into detail about how everything specifically looks. Rather, she documents interactions and writes how a character feels about a place or a person associated with the place. And somehow that's all the description I need for the setting, and really gives you insight into not only that place but the world in general. I'm not gonna claim that everyone will like this series. To be honest, I expect most people who pick up the first book to not finish it, because I think it takes a while to understand what makes the series so interesting. When I read the first chapter, it took me so long to get hooked, because the entire time you're wondering, what's gonna happen? Where's the magic and where's the conflict? But I promise you, you will get to a point where you put the book down, go to the gym, go to work, hug your cat, and then start thinking about these characters. You start thinking about who's the good guy and who's the bad guy, who's right and who's wrong, what should be done to those who have wronged, and how can someone ever tell when they're right? I think fantasy in general is so special because it creates an entire world where readers can really focus on certain themes of human expression, of human thought and human morals. I think Robin Hall perfectly understands this assignment that fantasy has, and I'm excited to continue reading her series.